Hello, welcome to the Talk Seagulls thing at Caxton Arms. We are back here again. Brighton aren't in great form, are they, Louis? But it's all right. I'm joined with Louis today. In case you haven't noticed already, Louis, mate, pleasure to have you here. I'd say that, but it seems like I see you after a very bad moment at the moment.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just coincidence. Let's go with coincidence.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to speculate too much, do we?
No. I mean, look, there's a lot of talk going on. We may as well, I'm not going to cover game specifics, but obviously we lost to Bournemouth. But what was your initial thoughts of the game? I mean, we had an under-23s team out near enough, didn't we?
We did. I think that was, I think I saw somewhere it was the second youngest side that's ever been fielded in the Premier League by average age.
Really?
Like, it was very, very, very inexperienced. But at the same time, how do we get to that situation? How do we get to the point where we're having to field such a young side? I mean, the likes of Odella Fire making his first Premier League start. Yeah. Marco Mani as well. They're both teenagers making their start in the Premier League in a situation where we're so short-handed that it's one of those precious situations. You've got to come in straight away, make an impact with little to no prior experience in the first team. It's not going to be easy, is it?
No.
And I think just the fact that we haven't really got the absolute strongest 11 each week, I think that also does play on the players' minds.
I thought the 23s boys did a good job of themselves. I'm not saying necessarily in that game because we did lose 3-0 and it's hard to... But I thought City again looked all right. And, we're in a situation now if it's... We don't have much choice. De Zerbi doesn't have too much choice over which right back we start, which left back we start. It has to be a 19-year-old Valentin Barco. Has to be Odella Fire, as you say, was on loan at Hearts not too long ago. And we don't have that great deal of choice. Marco Mani up front, as you mentioned. Even Carlos Baleba, etc., are very young players and not quite used to and ready to be in a De Zerbi system. So... I don't know. I think that they've done a decent job considering where we are at the moment. I wouldn't say that there's anything that indicates to me they're awful players, apart from a few little naive mistakes here and there.
Yeah, no, I think it's very difficult to write players off that quickly. I think we've got to make sure we don't fall foul to the mistakes of the fans of Chelsea and Man United who, if you have one or two bad games, you're immediately in the bad books or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's the Premier League and you've got to be a lot more cutthroat. But at the same time, these are players that have literally had barely any time, any experience in the biggest league in the world, and it's not going to be easy, So I think you've got to have a little bit of leniency, and you look at players like, you look at players like Billy Gilmore, for example, or even the likes of Purvis Estupiñán. I know they're not the younger players in the squad or the least experienced, but their first couple of games they looked ordinary, right?
Yeah.
They looked like they needed some time. But because we gave them that time, you look at the turnaround that both of those players have had, and suddenly, they're two, I'd say, shoe-in starters for us. Because we gave them that time, we gave them the chance to really bed themselves in and make a name for themselves. So again, I think it's just, you can't really be writing anybody off this soon. I'm
really glad you mentioned Gilmore, actually, because I found a tweet of mine yesterday, and this isn't to just find a random tweet of mine, but... It was about Billy Gilmore saying that he was a better player back in 2022, just about 2022. It was New Year's Eve of. And that was alongside Karim Mitoma. And obviously, I was then saying I wanted to see him alongside Alexis McAllister and Moses Caicedo, which obviously we know how that's ended.
Yeah, man can dream.
The outrage at the time towards Gilmore was, borderline scapegoating. Saying that he's not ready, he's not, anywhere near the player that I was making him out to be. And that was only a year ago. Right, so that's okay. A year and a half ago, I don't think that's a great deal of time, considering now people's thing is Gilmore's one of our best midfielders, or Facundo Buonanotte is now regular in and around the squad. Whereas at the beginning of this season, both of those players were thought of as being pretty much out of the picture. So I don't know how you can possibly write off the likes of Barco, etc., before they've even really had much of a chance to kick a ball.
Well, exactly, yeah. I mean, I think the situation with Gilmore especially was that because we lost Caicedo, we lost McAllister.
We noticed him too much.
We did, exactly. But that was the thing. He had to be that player. Exactly. He had to be the one that stepped up. So the fact that he's taken to that so quickly and he's taken it in his stride and gone, right, this is my role now, right? And it was the same with Estupiñán when he first came in. So now we're going to have to look at that with Barco. Obviously, we can see he's ridiculously talented on the ball. His defensive work rate maybe isn't quite there yet.
Yeah.
And he's maybe been found wanting a couple of times. But again, the kid's 19.
Yeah.
He's his what, second start in the Premier League?
Second, yeah.
And, you know, you can't expect him to immediately come in and be the best left back in the world.
No.
Right? And it's very clear to see how good he is going forward.
Yeah.
And when he gets that experience of playing in the system, seeing how everyone around him plays, I think then we'll start to see the real, fully well-rounded Valentin.
Yeah, and it's good you mentioned Barco, actually, because at Boca, he played left wing, left midfield.
Central midfield as well.
Yeah, he played a lot on the sort of higher end of the pitch.
As a wing-back.
Yeah, makes you wonder, doesn't it? Because obviously, whether Stupinian, when he comes back next season, obviously, I think Barco will be our starting left back, unfortunately, for the rest of this season for him. You know, I don't think he is quite ready to be there, but we don't have much choice, so he has to be. But he was very good advanced, and that gives another option, doesn't it, next season with the likes of Osman, Adingra, Mitoma already. You know, that left side for us will look really, really good. It's just about setting your mind to look into next season and not just get too downbeat about now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the main issue for us obviously has been the injuries and the fact that no one's really had a chance to really get a run in the side. So the fact that some of these players like Gilmour have been forced to really take on that role, and it's caused them, you know, they might start suffering with injuries as well. It's going to happen. But again, it's that time. It's got to be that time over and over again. And I think with the options that we got down the left, we saw at the start of even this season, Mitoma and Estepinian, that combination was lethal.
Yeah.
Genuinely lethal. It was one of the best left sides in the Premier League.
Yeah. And not only that, it was one of the best duos in the Premier League. You know, only really with you see like Kane and Son, for example, being in that extreme bracket. But we were pushing them in terms of goals and assist output. I mean, it was crazy between the two of them. I think they got, I don't even know off the top of my head, but a ridiculous amount of number of goals. And that left Solly March so, you know, unthought about, if you like. I mean, so many people forgot that Solly even played for Brighton when they would come up against us. And then you'd have that double sort of worry of the right side and the left side. Maybe didn't have as much, you know, with the right back with Veltman, but I think we could have done if we had a fit Tarek Lamptey. But again, these are situations that we haven't been able to see against Bournemouth, but in this season as well. We've not been able to really see a proper attack force since, would you say December, maybe just a bit before then?
Yeah, like end of the Europa League group stages. You know, when we had Ansu Fati, who was in the, you know, really, really good form, and we had the majority of our team fit after they had that sort of first culture shock of the Europa League. They started to really get used to the situation.
Yeah.
That was when we saw the best of Brighton, right? That was when we saw what this team is really capable of when everyone's fit, when everyone, you know, has got that, you know, cooler heads, right? And I think as long as we can all stay fit next season, you know, we've got to keep it together, you know.
Yeah.
And part of that is going to also come down to how we, you know, bolster our squad in the summer and what we do with that. Because if we've got all those players fit, and I think next year might be a blessing in disguise to not have to worry about Europe.
I agree. I'm glad you said that, actually, because I think if we had Europe again next season, we saw how much we struggled. You know, I think the club underestimated it, didn't they? Going into this season, they thought it's all right, we'll be okay. Brighton are always all right, right? But the reality said no chance. Even Ike Athens was a real test on that opening night, wasn't it? So there's been a lot of big shocks, I think, and maybe next season, as you say, just have a season of building will be. I wouldn't say beneficial because obviously you always want to be at the best position, but I think it will be in the sense of, you know, getting the squad prepared, but getting the staff prepared. You see, this week we've gone for a couple of backroom staff. I believe that's not going to be the last of backroom staff movement before the end of next season. So there's a lot of movement happening. I think we'll notice it as the summer transfer window opens. But even just looking at the end of this season, Louis, I mean, what's you know, bad for us now? Is it bad to lose against Villa, Chelsea, and Manchester United, Newcastle, or is that now it is what it is? We look to next season and move on.
I mean, you can view it as the fact that we're safe, but I feel like the club as a whole, I think, is on a bit of a knife edge right now. And it's not one of those situations where you're like freaking out, but you've got to think back to the likes of Southampton. You know, the ones who they had a really, really good season. They got themselves playing European football and they made a statement to the rest of the league. But from that point on, it was just a decline. And we We cannot let that happen to us because, what we've done is we've built an incredibly, incredibly promising platform for ourselves as a club. We just need to make sure that we then bolster the situation that we're in now. We need to make sure we back it up and not just get into that sort of complacency, I suppose, where, we said, oh, we've done this, now we can do it again, but we need to show that we can do it again.
Yeah.
And that in that same vein. And I think, the way that Southampton, what they did so wrong was they just, they went and bought a load of players that maybe didn't fit the system. They had a few manager changes, and all of a sudden they're back in the danger zone, and then they go down. And I feel like, I trust in Bloom and Barber to make the right decisions. I feel like they've got, their heads are much more screwed on, especially with Bloom being a Brighton fan. I feel like he's got more of the club's best interests at heart. But again, we're really on that knife edge, and I think we need to be really, genuinely, really careful.
Well, Leicester had the similar problem, didn't they? But I think Leicester's was a little bit more. I don't get the comparisons with us because they were a freak. 2016. Then they built really well for a period. They signed some really, really, really good players, genuinely Champions League quality players. And then they stayed there for a good couple of years. But the trouble was they never replaced who was the big core of their team, and that was the Jamie Vardys. That was those massive, massive players that carried them in that moment. Mahrez as well. Kante. And they never replaced, and it was inevitable. Once Vardy started aging at the Premier League level, who is going to score? Is it going to be Patson Daka? It's not, is it? So I think that was what they really suffered with. James Maddison, another one, although they have got Dewsbury Hall there now, but he could be Brighton next year. We don't know. But Leicester are a good example of what we don't want to happen. I think Southampton are the same bracket, but I do put Brighton a little bit differently in terms of we've got a Brighton football owner. He's a footballing man, but he's also a Brighton fan. It runs in his family to be having the club's best interest at heart, and it runs with his own passion to have the club's interest at heart. So I think we have that backing at least. But yes, we don't want to be naive because I think this season is probably, yes, learning curve, we said last time, didn't we? But I think naivety as well. What do you think of, on that subject, by the way, the whole De Zerbi thing? And I don't mean the whole ins and outs of the De Zerbi thing. I don't even really want to go over that again. But I mean, will it be him? Will it not be him? You see Kieran McKenna was being talked about yesterday at the time of recording this anyway, if this does go out before. It looked like McKenna was actually quite talked about, as in genuine talks. Believe there's talks with Amorim as well before, wasn't there, that we read? Regardless of who it is, do you not think it'd be better that it's De Zerbi at the helm next year, regardless of who might seem like the better option at the moment? I think
we all know that Tony Bloom has got his ways of running the club, right? And De Zerbi has probably been the first. I think we talked about this before as well. De Zerbi's been the first manager that's really stepped up, other than maybe Gus Poyet.
Yeah.
And we saw how Gus got treated in the end. Well, I say treated as in,
Gus,
we saw what happened.
He's not here anymore.
In the end. But I think with De Zerbi, the difference is that he showed real promise with the squad that we've got. If we can build upon that, I think, honestly, I believe the sky is the limit for our squad. And putting our faith in De Zerbi, who's shown that, the way that Pep Guardiola talks about him, unbelievable. Pep Guardiola is regarded as one of the best managers of all time. The way he talks about De Zerbi, it's like he looks up to him.
Yeah.
And
he did actually copy one of his tactics, to be fair, didn't he?
That's the thing. He said that Brighton are one of the best teams in the world at playing out from the back. And that is some compliment to get from Pep Guardiola.
Yeah.
And if if you're getting someone like him talking about our manager like that, that's the guy you want in charge. Of course, that's the guy you want in charge. But I think it's that relationship with the board. If we can keep that together, and obviously, there's got to be boundaries that both parties have got to have. Sure, Tony Bloom doesn't want to be completely walked over by De Zerbi and vice versa.
Do you think there needs to be more boundaries next season in the terms of what's said out in public? And I don't actually think De Zerbi's done too much wrong. If you actually listen to what he says, he hasn't done too much wrong.
No.
People just aren't used to hearing truths, in the media. But at the same time, if you are going to adapt to the English game, if you are going to adapt to probably different generations of football fan in this country, saying stuff that is happening behind the scenes isn't very thought upon in any industry, by the way. Even if it was this one, we don't tend to talk about conversations back even beyond this camera here, right? So Do you not think that maybe there's something there where De Zerbi might have to tone it down, or do you think it's just part of his nature? If we keep him, we have to keep him as he is, sort of thing.
I think it is probably part of his nature, but I don't mind having a manager that's a bit more expressive. I feel like it's not necessarily about having a human side per se, but I like the fact that, this comes from a place of he cares, right? You compare him to someone like Potter, right?
Yeah.
Who never really showed too much
any emotion, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Palace away, it was a bit of
he
a
almost
like.
Seems too. I wouldn't say too media trained, but do you know what I mean? It's like he's almost too restrained, and he's too worried about possibly saying the wrong thing, regardless of whether it's right or wrong. He's too worried about saying.
Till
the
he
wrong
went
thing.
to Chelsea.
Yeah, exactly.
And they were in the effing Champions League, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think that was that came from a place of desperation because he got sacked a month later.
Yeah.
But I think, with De Zerbi, I feel like it's good to have the fact that he's expressive. Obviously, as long as it doesn't get personal or anything, I don't see really the issue.
Yeah.
And I like having someone that speaks their mind. And, like I say, everything that he does, it comes from a good place. You know, the way he talks about players, he says someone like Ansu Fati maybe isn't physically good enough for the Premier League.
Yeah.
But he also follows that with, it's very clear to see he's incredibly talented.
Yeah.
Right? So obviously, what he's saying... it's never tried to be directly negative or downplaying anyone's abilities.
It's constructive, and I think the same with. I've seen particularly Carlos Baleba. People really think that he's got some sort of agenda against Baleba, and I don't. I'm here to tell you right now he doesn't. Right, I'm putting this into any camera that's looking at me. It'll be that one. He doesn't have an agenda against Baleba. I think that he talks about him in the sense of he's a serious talent. Like his, awards, should I say, Basuma, like was Moises Caicedo, like was Alexis McAllister. We knew how good they could be. They were naive too when they first came. It's like people forget that part of having Basuma, like having Caicedo. But maybe Caicedo was actually a bit of an exception. He was quite exceptionally good when he came in, at the time he came in, but you forget that he had loans in between that period. He went to the bottom of, I think it was Beerschot, wasn't it?
Beerschot.
And was in the bottom of the literally relegation zone over in Belgium before we recalled him in 2022. So again, this is a Caicedo now that went for a British transfer record fee. This is a Basuma now who, okay, maybe he's not doing the best, but he's at a Tottenham club, right? He's at a big club in Tottenham, should I say, and did very, very well for us, carried us towards the end of the season in that final year. So again, Baleba is in that similar sort of bracket. Very, very new, very, very good, I think. Very, very naive, as I keep using that word, because again, it's the similar sort of mistakes. It's a dodgy back pass. It's not knowing where to play it when he should play it, or when to play it when he should play it. But when De Zerbi says that in the media, it's not him actually having a go at Baleba. It's saying he didn't do this, but he's a supreme talent with a huge, huge potential.
I think, again, like I say, it's the way that he speaks about players, and it's never an agenda. With someone like Baleba, you have to bear in mind this kid has come in, and we've spent, £20 million on him, and he had, I think, like 5 starts in Liga before he came to us.
Yeah.
And immediately he's come into a side where we've just lost our entire midfield, by the way. Caicedo, McAllister, we've both just...
And one of the replacements is on loan, by the way.
Exactly. And we're replacing those two with a 20-year-old who's made 6 starts in the French league, right, for Lille, and Billy Gilmour, who's... I wouldn't really call him that same sort of position.
No, and he's only just getting into the squad, really.
Yeah, realistically, yeah, he is. And we're relying on Pascal Gross to play that holding midfield role sometimes if he's not playing right back, if he's not playing, I don't know, right wing or number 10
goal.
or whatever. The fact that he can basically play anyway, he's so valuable to us. And I think, the fact that, that we've had Baleba come in and immediately the pressure's been on him, the same way it was on Gilmour to begin with. So, of course, we're going to see those moments where maybe he's not going to be 100%. But even now, I mean, the first game that Gilmour's come back, right, from his injury, you can see the difference he makes. Even if the result didn't go our way, you can see immediately the difference that Gilmour makes when he comes into our midfield.
You can.
So we have to give Baleba that same time. Because if we do, I think, I believe genuinely that he could be the rock for our midfield for the next few years. And again... we have to get out of that mode of trying to sell our best players as soon as we get a good offer. Have Baleba as the foundation of that midfield, because it's clear to see. You see those little runs he makes. where he drives the ball 40, 50 yards up the pitch. If he can just refine his decision making,
Yeah.
hell of a player.
It's decision making. That's it. That's the point of any player that's making that next step, isn't it? When they're young.
Exactly. 20 years old, you can't expect them to just immediately be, completely switched on.
I didn't even make the right decision today. I drove here. I was going to get a train, and I've spent 15 quid on a ticket anyway. But no, that's my point. So yeah, I mean, I'm 23. Made the wrong decision there. But no, this is the point. It's naivety. It's not knowing really quite what the next step to do is, and that's absolutely fine at the moment for us. And I think that's just the point of acceptance we got to get to. Is, I think in the summer you mentioned the spending thing, and the selling thing. More to the point, I think that'll be fine. One, I don't see any of our players going. I think the only one that maybe looked at is Joao Pedro or Karamitoma. Don't think there's enough value there for anyone quite yet to actually pull the trigger reasonably. As in, I couldn't see anyone going for the fees that we'd want for both of them players. And also, the club's the whole message, isn't it, going into the summer is we don't want to sell, we don't need to sell, and that's that. So I hope that we stick by that. But then again, if a stupid fee comes in for someone, there's not much you can do at that point because we are Brighton and we have to accept that. But I do think, I know it's annoying, but it's true. But I don't think that there's too much to worry about. Is the point of this whole thing that I'm trying to get across. I'm picking out these little bits that people get quite worked up about: Carlos Baleba, De Zerbi, future, summer, spending, results. I think when you look at all of it and actually break it down, it's okay. We've been through a lot worse, and I don't want to sound like one of them people that says back in my day, but I'd love to have seen Brighton Twitter back when even Hippier was around, because that could have been quite fun. It's still raw, isn't it, this expectation, and we're not quite sure where it goes, and we're all sort of guessing based on what clubs say in the past. But I think at the moment, just trust the process and see what happens. And I think, in my opinion anyway, keeping De Zerbi is the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Because I think that stability, as you say, is the biggest thing that we need this summer, and the only thing we should be doing is building.
Absolutely. I mean, stability. I'm glad you said that, because you look at what we did last transfer window, and again, I think we've looped back to this a few times, but the stability that we could have had we just held on to either Caicedo or McAllister and have them to continue to build that foundation in midfield. Think about how good of a mentor McAllister would have been to someone like Baleba, who can immediately teach them the system, get them involved and understand the ways that they play together. Just literally holding on to that core for one more season. Imagine how well we could have done in Europe, and in fact the season in general, because you looked at how well we played when Caicedo and McAllister were that holding two in our midfield. Ridiculous. Last season we played so many teams off the park, and we get rid of that and we don't replace them adequately. All of a sudden, you see that's where we get overrun.
It feels like people forget that, though, don't they?
Yeah.
People forget that was Brighton. They just think of now in the last couple of months.
Yeah, people have very short memories.
Yeah, agree. This will get out before Villa, won't it?
Should do.
Yeah. So Villa, I'm just going to ask you sort of, I put them on a similar pedestal as Man City when we play them. And I don't mean they are as good as Man City, but I mean I expect the exact same thing as Man City would do to us when we play against Aston Villa, a complete loss. They have done it to us many times, even before we were even that good in the Championship, or they were that good. When they were bad, they were still wiping us off the park. So it's one of them teams that I never fancy.
It's a bogey team.
Yeah. A 6-1 at Villa Park is still in my head vividly, and I can't believe that was already nearly a year ago. So tell me, what do you think?
I mean, it couldn't have really come at a worse time for us, but I think, I don't know if there's any point being too worked up about it, because we know we're in a bit of a rut right now. And I think as long as our heads don't completely drop, we can use this. Actually, what we could do is use this time of the season where we've got nothing left to play for, we're mathematically safe. This is our chance to really try and experiment, maybe with some new lineups, some new formations, but get those players that need the bedding in to bed them in. And if you're doing it, if you think about the running we've got, we've got Villa, we've got Newcastle, we've got some really, really strong teams.
The worst teams you could possibly think of.
Possibly the hardest.
Apart from United, now they'll smack us 4-0. So sorry for saying that.
Yeah, sure they will. But yeah, I mean, on paper, we've got one of the hardest run-ins of any team, right?
Yep.
And if you look at that, obviously there's still a lot to play for the top dogs, but for us, nothing. And if we're playing against these best teams in the league, and some of these players are getting a chance to really find their feet, that's a perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
And again, that's a platform that we can then build on next season.
Agree. And De Zerbi actually mentioned that in the press conference last week. He said it's about building the new Brighton. We've had the old Brighton. It's still here, by the way. The Solis, etc. We don't even need to say the names of the old Brighton of last season. But it's about building that new platform. Your Facundos, the players that are going to potentially shape the future, the next future, not even the distant future, the next future, next season. Your Facundos, Barco as well needs to be mentioned in that same breath. Carlos Baleba. These are players that can cement themselves amidst this entire summer of potential rebuild to say, no, we're here to stay in this first team for next season as well. I do think there's a couple of cases there. I think Baleba, as you said before, is one of those. Omani as well looked quite useful. Maybe someone that could want to stick around, not want to go on loan, stay, be the next Evan Ferguson, if you like. He looks like him, doesn't he? It's quite scary. But yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, just build the next Brighton, the new Brighton that is. The rest of it will come. We have to just simply be patient, and as difficult and as hard it is to accept until August, that's all we can do.
Yeah, I will contest you on one thing though.
Okay.
I don't think it's about building the new Brighton. I think it's about building this Brighton, but making them better.
Yeah.
Like we don't want, because that's what we tried to do last season. We tried to build a new Brighton by selling all of our players and saying, this is what we've got. We're going to build a new Brighton without our two best midfielders, but we didn't replace them.
That's fair.
What we need to do is we're building upon this Brighton and improving them. We're not trying to, cut thin our squad again and get rid of some of our really key players and not replacing them. We got the foundations now. We add the bits and pieces that we need to, but we've got this core, and we've clearly got players that are capable, some less so, maybe some that don't quite suit the system.
Yeah.
But if we do that, if we make the right moves in the summer, we build upon this team.
That's what we need, isn't it? It's, as we say, the amount of young talent we've got is a joke. It is a joke.
It is a joke.
Most clubs would kill for the amount of young players we've got. And I'm not saying they're ready now. No. But that doesn't matter. And I think, yeah, you're right. It's about, this Brighton, and making them ready for next season.
Yeah.
And testing them. Do they need a loan? Do they need to stay here? Carl Rushworth, Jeremy Sarmiento coming back next season, James Beadle. We've got so many good players, mate. We do.
Absolutely.
And it's about appreciating them players, I think. I mean, look at Ipswich at the moment, and we look at Sarmiento. People would look at an Ipswich side at the moment, looking at their best players as who they could potentially nick next season. And everyone does that when they look into the Championship. Joao Pedro, for us, half of them are from us on loan in these different clubs. So I think people forget that as well, is these players are here. You just got to remember that for next season, the season after. But we'll see. Shout out to Van Hecker, by the way.
Oh my God, yes.
Blackburn loan last season. No one even thought anything of him. Breakout star, player of the season for me.
I think I'd agree there, to be honest. Like, I think the step up that
proves the point, doesn't it? Though?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's quite difficult to try and make a comparison to someone like Levi Colwill, because it was clear to see how good Colwill was. And, I think the chances he's had at Chelsea, although limited, I think he's, again, really starting to prove what he can do. But the fact that Van Hecker has had to step in where, if we're going to be completely honest, it's not been Dunk's best season. And I think it's arguably probably been one of his worst. And that's no discredit to him, because I think he's now set his own bar so high.
Out in
he's burning out. He's played pretty much every game. And, you can't expect him to be as good as he is. And I think it's kind of ironic that the one season where he's not playing at the best form is when he gets one of the most call-ups from England. It's almost like Southgate's just trying to whittle him down. But I digress. My point is, with Van Hecker, he's had to step into this role. And he's what, 22? He's really
think
not
he's
that
my
old
age.
at all. He's really, really young.
It's just scary.
And the fact that he's come in, and I know it's obviously not great to just go off stats that you see online, but if you compare his numbers, his defensive numbers, to Van Dijk...
Yeah, he comes out on top, doesn't he?
He does.
Squawkers
put it up, yeah. You compare him... And you think about the Netherlands, the back three that they could play, Van Dijk, Van der Ven and Van Hecker.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Vans.
Yeah, or the fleet of vans. There you go. And they've still got players like Nathan Ake. They've got all sorts.
Yeah,
I mean,
they are loaded. To be fair, you
serious
forget
depth
about that.
for the
Defenders,
Euros.
yeah.
I think it would be pretty harsh if he didn't make the squad, but they're so stacked.
Yeah.
You know, I think they're a bit of a dark horse for the Euros, but the fact that he's come in and proved himself that quickly after, you know, necessarily, I think last season he was probably maybe third or fourth in the pecking order. He was around the same level as
he wasn't
Webster.
even going to really be that kept about, was he? No one really thought about it. They were even talking about getting rid of him. So this breakout's been insane. Yeah, really.
The fact that he's taken it in his stride and really stepped in when Dunk hasn't necessarily been on his best form. I think that's a massive credit to him.
Yeah,
massive credit. And I think the errors that he made last season, where he was a bit too rash almost, I think his one-on-one defending is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Sorry. This just summarises really the point, doesn't it? The whole point of the young players we've got. No one remembers that Van Hecke was on loan at Blackburn last year.
Yeah, but it's that time. You've just got to give him time.
Yeah, you do. No, top man, Louis. Not as good as last time. I'm quite gutted, but no, it was good stuff. We move on.
Yes.
We're not as bad as people make out, and also we've seen a lot worse.
We've been to the darker days, the hippier days. I remember being back in school and all the trash I used to get from everyone else around me because of how
bad we were.
How bad.
Go back to League One. And also, can I just say, not even the worst we've been in the Premier League.
No, it's not.
Not even the worst we've been in the Premier League.
You know, that stint where Houghton, it was literally Houghton's last 10 games.
Horrendous.
I'll tell you what it was. It was when we lost at Fulham. And because at Christmas we were 10th, I think.
Yeah.
We lost to Fulham, and I don't think we won a game until April or something. That was the absolute slums.
It's horrible.
You know, we lost those games to Bournemouth and Cardiff, and we were genuinely screwed. I thought that was going to be us back in the Championship, and it might have just been the dream gone.
That's it. I agree. I thought we were down. I 100%. Even I remember saying to my dad at the time, and we were so convinced we were relegated. We were like, we wanted to go back to Championship anyway.
Yeah, it was going to be that consignment of we didn't really like that.
That's it, right? We've not even seen worse in the Premier League. Anyway, Louis, top man, thank you for joining me. Make sure you come down Caxton, join Brett Mendoza's Caxton Arms. Sorry, I'm looking at this one. But yes, it has been great fun. Fatboy Slim has his own mural down here now, which is very cool. We can put a little thing up on the screen because it is very, very cool. Make sure you come down here. Make sure you follow, subscribe if you're on YouTube, stream if you're on Spotify. We'll see you next time. And up the Albion.